Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Welcome aboard. FB notification just came. Bridge MCP says. Yvette Avery Herod, afternoon. PDR passes, she says. And of course, Bridge MCC says, wait a minute. No FB notification. As you can see, I'm reading from the bottom up. Okay. We also have AVQ says, listening in from away on Twitch. No wonder we didn't get all of your pros, brother Rudnan. We don't have your pros, but that's good. We have another good interview for you guys today. Let's see who else have we got. Alistair Waters. How are you doing, Alistair Waters? Welcome aboard. Eric Hayes is here in the house as well. He says, got your progressive wish government put in regulations on one type of business, and this is the reason why you don't have investments from energy companies on existing leases, as the government will let them drill or whatever. I don't want them drilling, so great. I don't want them drilling, so good. It is amazing how much you want to put faith in the thugs who drill. I mean, it's amazing. You want to put so much faith in these guys that are simply there to drill and not protect the different sublayers of earth. Remember, I did the business. I wrote the software that, well, not, I wasn't the only one, of course, but I wrote software that exploded the different layers. You know, when you drop those, when you drill a hole, a lot of people think, okay, the oil companies drill a hole and the oil just come up, and that's not how it works, right? You drill a hole, you put, in certain areas, you put a casing in with cement around it so that you can protect the different layers of oil. A lot of these guys are doing all of that wrong. I remember having to write the software that blew the explosives into the casings so that the oil will flow into the strata, out of the strata into the flow. Let me tell you something, guys. Eric, yes, I'm happy for what we're doing so far. Very consistent. Bridge MCP, never rely on FB notification. Egberto is fairly consistent. 4 p.m. or a minute afterward. Just set an alarm and start. I love you, Rodney. Big ear hug. Big ear hug. Just remember, folks, if you love our show, be here at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. What time is it again on the West Coast? It is at las una, por favor, a las una. Good, it's a good thing, Eric. Thank you, Bridge, for agreeing. Paul Fleming checking in from ATL. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Alistair Waters says, great minds, Bridge. Anyhow, guys, how are you doing today? Before I get into our video, how are you guys watching? How Ted Cruz went against Kakenji Jackson? I'm just going to say Judge Jackson until I can get the name right. Did you see how he went after her? Did you see how rude he was? Did you see how rude he was to the chairman of the committee? This guy is an obnoxious piece of, I don't know how to best describe him as a human being, but he is a sorry excuse for a senator. And I think everybody has to agree with that. He is a sorry excuse of a senator. Let's see. Eric says, no, line here, solar and wind are not happening as fast. And if this pushed it, will devastate. You know what? It's not going as fast as we can because we have all the people that are protecting the fossil fuel industries. Throw all that money as if it's a Manhattan project into renewables, and there will be the problem solved. But you see, again, you want to tie our hands and then say you guys are not moving fast enough. Limited thinking controlled by the indoctrination and brainwashing by a fossil fuel industry who is giving you the shaft. Those of you protecting them, they're giving you the shaft. They're charging they're taking away your wealth, and you're saying, please take more, please take more, please take more. Bridge MCP, he should have been escorted out. Bridge, I was so thinking that, Bridge. I was so thinking that. E2247, welcome aboard. E2247 says, Eric's, let's see, no, I missed that. It scrolled at the same time I was going to say something, but I'll tell you what, before I read E2247, let me read what what AVQ reply was. Eric Hayes, good article. The U.S. Security and Exchange Commission unveiled its long-standing anticipated draft rule under which companies would disclose their own direct and indirect greenhouse gas emission, known as Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. This would also require companies to disclose the actual or likely material impacts that climate-related risks will have on their business, strategy, and outlook, including physical risks, as well as possible new regulations as a carbon tax. I agree. All right. Cruz is puck on the arse of B. Alistair, you're being bad. AVQ says fossil fuel externalities. The environmental damage and human health costs would be calculated by such exactly. And then suddenly $4.50 gas is going to seem cheap. Because you guys who paid $4.50 for gas, you're paying a lot more because you're paying healthcare through the roof. And guess what is making your healthcare go through the roof? All the pollution and all the trouble caused by what? Fossil fuels. All right. You know, that's how it is, guys. That's how it is. Bree says, Twitch, AVQ, Eric's article is actually worth reading. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right. What is it called? SEC said unveil landmark climate change disclosure. All right. Para ver what else will we go before we start the interviews. Let's see what else. Guys, before the interview is about 28 minutes long. So, I mean, before I get to that and leave you, why don't you tell me anything else that you want to discuss real quickly before I go there? I have a couple of videos to show, that one and the other. So if there anything else anybody wants me to talk about before we get into that video, let me know now and we'll talk about it. We'll discuss it and then we'll move on. It's going to go like this. 10, 9, 8, 7. If I get a message, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Just a reminder, 1 in 5 deaths are a result of air pollution, says ABQ. Eric Hayes says, why is Europe using more coal? Europe is using more coal because they've lost the natural gas and other hydrocarbons temporarily from Russia. We could have mitigated that if we still wanted to burn oil by opening up Iran and a country that is swimming in oil, which is Venezuela. Now, I would much rather that light oil from, let's say, more from Saudi Arabia. Venezuela has nasty oil. It has a lot of sulfur in it, which a lot has to be extracted out of it, just like some of the shales, etc. But whatever the case is, we do not have an oil shortage, and we don't have a sun, wind, and wave shortage either. We have enough area in America that with solar, hydro, wind, and wave, we could be 100% renewable if we chose to do it. But there are so many people that are trying to lie to you, which you have a propensity to believe, that will stop that. But we have enough. Again, here are the 4 renewables that we have right now, that if we went on a crash program in 10 years, we would be 100% effective. Let me repeat. Solar, wind, wave, and hydroelectric. Those 4 modals would give us all the energy we need. And by the way, that should also come with a huge back-end store. And notice I mentioned hydro, right? There's a part of hydro many folks don't realize. Hydro can serve as a back-end store. Let me give an example. We can have, people talk about, well, what happens when the sun isn't shining? Well, that's what batteries are for. But everybody look at batteries and say lithium. Lithium batteries, we're going to have to mine all this lithium to produce electricity. They forget one particular principle. That's not the only battery that we have. A lake is a battery, okay? A lake is a battery. It's an inefficient battery, but if you're using solar energy to fill the lake, it's a battery. So let me give you certain theories that a lot of people don't realize. We could create in various areas where we have these, we could have a hell of a national grid that is fixable. In other words, a national grid that is not nationally ran. What I mean by that is you have a grid structure that can fix itself. In other words, parts go down, it's okay to reroute, all that good stuff. We can do that now. Okay? And here's how we do it. We have this huge network of electrical lines built by we the people. That way you have no profit motive that stops you from building it. You build it efficiently based on what the country needs, not what a corporation needs for profit. So that's the first thing we build, transmission lines, so that wherever energy is created, we can move it. That's numero uno. Numero dos, in areas where it is efficient to have solar panels, we have a ton of solar panels where possible. In areas where we have a lot of wind power, we have all the windmills possible in those areas. On the coastlines and at the Great Lakes where we have major waves, we create structures not only on coastlines, but structures deep in sea that, again, if you have waves, there are a lot of technologies people don't understand, right? When you have a wave and you get a column of water, right? When that wave is up, if you have a piston down below, it will go up and down, even though you don't see the motion of water because of the spring effect of having more pressure or not. So you can have the wave energy of the Great Lakes, the wave energy of the ambient, the vast amount of oceans that we have. And then the last but not least is hydro, which I also call one of the best back-end stores. Okay? One of the best back-end stores. So here, folks, don't let them lie to you at all. Here are all the different areas that we need. Here's what Eric comes up with, one of the lies they tell, right? Egberto, you can't reach all areas. I am on 20 acres of land with propane, only available with some solar, so still on fossils. Again, you're missing the point. The first thing I said is we build the most efficient, best transmission system, bar none. We can do it as a country. We know how to build it. Profit stops it because it's not profitable for corporations who want infinite profit. So we build the transmission lines from all the sources of production. Wave, wind, solar. We can do that. After you have all those transmission lines, you say, but what about, what are the areas where we have problems with storage? There are times we don't have waves. They're big enough waves. There are times we don't have wind, and half the day we don't have solar. True. But because we have all these transmission lines everywhere, and not only the transmission lines, but because we talk about building great hydro storage plants, in other words, lakes, we can kill two birds with several stones now, right? We can put lakes in areas that are environmentally sound, right? And those lakes serve as what? Back in store. Those lakes are batteries. We also build a lot of hardware batteries as well. We can have a lot of lead acid batteries where it's efficient. We can have a lot of what's the formula for batteries? You know, the alkaline batteries. We can have all these different type of battery technologies in different places to store. Google has a huge lithium battery storage for their one of their companies that is completely on green energy. It is possible. Nobody wants to say what I am talking about because it requires huge investments that only government can make, because corporations need profit to exist and they cannot see the transition worth their while. Peggy Lopez just brought in another form of energy I completely forgot. Geysers. And it's not only geysers, Peggy, because you know I have such intelligent viewers on this show. It's just amazes me. You are absolutely right with geysers and geothermal, as AVQ points it out. Geothermal is another method, but there's another method that's similar to geothermal that I haven't even mentioned, and that is the differential in temperatures in the earth. So therefore, a lot of new cities, what they're doing is under your home, they drill very deep holes, because the differential in temperature deep down and above gives you what's known in physics terms, a differential. And wherever you have differentials, you can acquire energy. You can mine energy. What that means is if on top of the place is 10 degrees warmer than below, which is or vice versa, if you have a temperature differential, you can build a machine. And what is a machine? You can build a machine that generates energy. So I think it is so important for us to know that there are a myriad forms of energy, and what it requires is a national resolve if we really want to do this. And you know what? People say, well, China is going to continue to burn coal. True. But here's what happens. We build all this technology in all these different types of green technologies in America. We build them here. We install them here. Because we're not burning the fossil fuels and all of that, those costs are gone. It is a lot more in the long term, because the cost of energy is just the cost of delivery and the cost of building the system, not the cost of the oil itself, not the cost of the gas itself. It is a lot cheaper. We have the wherewithal to do it. We just have to do it. We choose not to do it. We choose to use a capitalist structure to define. We make an economic system stop us from doing something that we have resources to do. That is a fatal nature of capitalism, because the capitalist cannot find a way to monetize what I just stated, but the government can. Okay? We the people can. It cannot be capitalized profitably. It cannot. And it shouldn't be. As I always say, the energy sector does not belong with the lousy corporations that are simply there to do you know what. All right, let me read a few more things. The CCC was a good program. Geothermal. Carl Cox says money, corruption, greed, ignorance drive the reason for the love of fossil fuels by most, not all politicians. Also Cruz and other GOP garbage of the Senate Judiciary Committee are a joke. E2247 says I would have called the SRO if oh sorry, Derby. Geothermal is only available in some locations, unlike wind, solar, which are available pretty much everywhere. Geothermal is unavailable in most cities, for example. But what I want to talk about geothermal, because it's important that you look at geothermal not only as there being a magma in the ground that produces geysers. Geothermal is also the differential between the top of the temperature above and below. Remember what I said earlier. If you have a temperature differential, you can create an engine. And if you can create an engine, you can generate power. Science. Okay? That's what I want to put out there for everybody to know. There are all these technologies that are ready, and we don't want to use one. We want to use them all over what's best in the location. You talk about a city, brother AVQ. Here's the deal. In my house in the middle of a city, if I could go about 1,500 feet down with several poles, I could create me enough energy that I would never have to cool my house again. But it's not there, right? Because it's prohibitive to do that right now under the capitalist structure. But if we had people that saying, we're going to map out these different areas, if we had companies, government companies that map out all these areas that they're going to go do work in, and every year we use less fossil fuels because we are doing what's right, eventually we'll get it done. But it requires national resolve and not the greed and the psychopathy of the capitalist structure. Carl Cox, by using green renewable energy, America will set an example for the rest of the world. And that is what I'm saying. If we started on a march and we decided to lead and we did this, that's exactly what would happen. My mom always told me, Alistair Waters says, just because your friends didn't isn't an acceptable reason. My response to China, using coal. Alistair, not a big ear hug. You're right about that. Bridge MCP says, my mom said the same, and also just because they jumped off the bridge doesn't mean you have to. I love it. I love it. Anyhow, Paul Fleming says, I'm so tired of you Texas Republicans talking about government when your very own Republican state is terrible. Your government left you to freeze. You always use the national government funds when there's a tornado. hurricane, or what other national disaster that you helped create. Exactly, brother Paul Fleming. Try reading articles about wind, solar, and battery power. It's here and it's the future. Eric Hayes says, Egberto, you driving green yet? No, I'm not driving green yet, but I will as soon as I can afford it. Right now, as it is, I'm on status quo of not being able to spend. You see what I'm doing here? I'm here in DC. I'm not doing a whole lot of stuff other than writing, reading, all these kinds of stuff. Very, very important work. And the truth of the matter is, Politics Done Right has to get a hell of a lot bigger for me to be able to go ahead and get rid of my old clunker. Anyway, Jack Williams says, methane leaks at the poles have increased global warming to a point where we have no choice as a species to change out our fossil fuels. Why is one talking about this emergency? It's probably the biggest crisis mankind has ever faced. Jack Williams, you hit the nail on the on the head. Absolutely so. Why did I say hell? Poetic justice, maybe. We got Juliana Pacificana. Aloha, brother Egberto. Estás llamando? Are you coming in from Hawaii? That sounds like a Hawaii name. Okay, you recycle, Eric Hayes. All right, let me go ahead and play our interview of the day today. Unless you guys want to keep talking about renewables, I could always hold that back until tomorrow. I tell you what, the show that the interview that I have is about 29 minutes, and I have only 34 minutes worth of show. If you guys want to hold on to that interview for tomorrow, and we continue to discuss green energy, I can do that with more people coming in, or I can do the interview. The interview is a interview about identity politics, wokeness, etc., from an author of 2 books. You tell me which one you want. Here's time for you to vote. Should I do the video or should we continue talking? You guys are going to decide. Do I do the video or do we continue talking about this renewable energy that, okay, video is what AVQ voted for. Any other votes? Can't let you be the only vote, AVQ. Any other votes? Other votes? Videos? Come on, guys. Let me hear it. Let me hear it. I'm going to go to 10 and then AVQ wins. 10, 9, interview video. That's 2 down. You guys are going to have to beat that if you want me to continue. Video. Are we going with the video? Here we go with the video, guys. Here we go with the video. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have the honor of speaking to Darius Kamali. Darius is a former analyst with the State Department, supported International Monitor Institute, the visual evidence wing for several tribunals on war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. He transitioned to political documentary, then to television and feature animation producing in Hollywood as executive producer on a number of movies. Recently, the global pandemic provided the opportunity, like it has done for so many people, to change things around, and the catalyst for Kamali to return to his roots and his passion with 2 genre-bending, timely, thought-provoking, critically acclaimed books. First one titled Mistake of Identity, and the second one, Dog Whistling Dixie Past the Graveyard. First of all, welcome aboard Politics Done Right. Darius, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Barely recognize myself with that intro there.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, you're an important man with many different, what should I say? Many different options. Okay.
Many different hats. How about that?
Many different hats. That's what,
yeah.
You know, sometimes you're looking for that word that just doesn't come to you. A word as simple as HATS, hats.
There you go.
All right, let's get busy. Why mistaken identity? Why Dog Whistling Dixie Past the Graveyard? One of them actually seems sort of poetic.
Interesting that you say that. You know, I don't know if people have defined both of these as poetic, but I'm not sure if they're traditional poetry. They're not traditional anything. I would say they're maybe genre benders is the best way to describe them. That's how we
named it, yeah.
There you go, without describing them. They're, in very broadly speaking, there is some poetry, especially in Dog Whistling Dixie Past the Graveyard, which obviously is a term that's composed of 3 different expressions there. That's somewhat lyrical. But I would say they combine several genres. One of them is In the Eastern tradition, there's such a thing as a Zen koan, right? Which is meant to be a riddle and a brain breaker to take you to another level of understanding. Then there's also the tradition that we had in the 19th century in the United States, which people have forgotten about, the aphoristic tradition. And of course, they're partly contemporary tweet. With people's attention spans these days, I think it's a good fit. And I didn't plan it that way. I was during the pandemic just writing down some of my thoughts and putting them down on social media, but sometimes in hidden formats, so only I would see them, just so that they're not lost.
Well, it's your story. It was your story. It was your cloud.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And later I realized, there's enough here to categorize and put out there as, books, or they're small books. They're light reading in the sense that, you can come back to them and go through them very quickly. But hopefully in terms of content, a little heavier than that.
Well, I mean, from what I've read of it, it's not heavy. I mean, you can write heavy stuff in a form that makes it palatable to read. In other words, you want to put things in some sort of a format that educates, illustrates, but at the same time, you want to read. And that's what I think. I think that is where you're trying to go, if you will.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's exactly it. And you know what? I didn't sit and decide I'm going to devote this much time to writing these books. They were just ideas that came to me. And obviously, they're informed by my background, by my personal experience, both my ethnic experience, my professional experience, both in Hollywood and before that in human rights, NGO world. And so, it's a culmination of my entire life's experience to some extent. And when you said timely, it's interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, it seems that they're timely, right? It seems like some of these timely issues have been with us forever. And in a sense, maybe at least the issues are timeless.
Well, let me first of all, you talk about it. A lot of this is drawn from your experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you before we get into, because I'm going to want to hit up the topic on identity and hit up the topic on what's the word to take you out. What's a famous word that we're using today? I don't know what's wrong with my mind today.
Woke?
Erasing you.
Is that one? Well, there's so many.
You. Yeah.
Yeah, one word that I use, there's so many directions to come at it. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying before that, tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, I've sort of had 3 phases to my career, and it looks on the surface that they're unrelated. And in a sense they are, except that I went through all of them. I originally started in human rights, you could say. I worked as an analyst for something called the International Monitor Institute, which was an NGO, a non-governmental organization. However, it turned out that we started getting government money. So that's a whole other story. And I got to see as a green young man how it is that the government can actually step in and control you, not by sending you to Siberia necessarily, but just waving some money, right? And from that point onward, it amazingly turned out that they had a say-so in what we should concentrate on and what we shouldn't, to put it that way. So I got to see that firsthand and transitioned from there. I was an analyst for War Crimes Tribunal, I should put it that way. The IMI was the visual evidence wing for some tribunals for the former Yugoslavia, for Rwanda, the ethnic cleansing and genocide that went on there, and for Iraq. And that was my specialty, Iraq, the former Ba'athist regime and Saddam Hussein. From there, I transitioned to documentaries. First, more, you could say, political documentaries or human rights related, child soldier, so on and so forth. And I discovered that as my role grew, from originally just a researcher to then becoming, segment producer, associate producer, a field producer, whatever these titles were, that the nature of the documentaries became more and more commercial, right? And that's, bound to happen here in Los Angeles. And then I transitioned entirely into the something else, which is the world of animation, with a film called Igor, the first animated feature film that was made by an independent rather than by a studio back in 2008. We've done a couple of more since then for Netflix and Amazon Prime, and really was tied up in that world and augmented reality as well up until the pandemic, when I had some time on my hands suddenly that was forced on me like so many others. And that allowed me to really decide to go back to my roots, which is ideas. You know, I was a philosophy major and a person interested in the root of issues rather than just the surface momentary
Deeper.
politics of it. Yeah, and so, you know, the pandemic gave me an opportunity. In fact, the story that I usually tell is that, you know, I discovered myself recently that the word radical is an ancient. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Yeah, is ancient Latin and ultimately Greek word, which means the root. And so, in that sense, I would describe these books as radical, the sense that they're trying to get to the root of the issue rather than just the surface momentary politics of the day and the particular mask or jargon.
Now, how do you describe identity in America?
Well, I would say it's, I don't know if it's, I would describe it as any different in America as anywhere else. I think it's deeply ingrained in us, including myself. You know, I don't exempt myself from any of this. I think it's a way for us, even perhaps at a biological level, to differentiate, you know, maybe at a genetic level. But once you associate with a certain group based on any characteristic you choose, then anyone that doesn't share that particular characteristic is the out group, right? And so one of my fundamental sort of ideas here is that I'm fine with concentrating on the specifics, Black versus white, you know, gay versus straight, whatever, nation versus nation, tribe versus tribe. And we can play that game, and I'm happy to play that game. But ultimately, unless we see that these are just all manifestations of a larger term called groupism, I'm calling it groupism, and it's an inelegant term, but I haven't found a better term that encompasses all of these things, then we're just playing a sort of, I say this in one of the books, I forget which one, a sort of musical chairs. If anyone remembers that game from childhood.
Who's the one that's left out?
That's right. Who's the one? That's right. And so, you know, we can concentrate on, is it the people with the blue masks that are going to be standing up when the music stops, or the people with the red masks? But ultimately, wouldn't it be better if we just added a couple of more chairs rather than, so a positive solution rather than a negative solution based on need. And that seems obvious when put that way, but unfortunately, I think it's not so obvious the way our brains and our psychology is constructed.
And why don't you think we put the other two chairs?
Well, you know, there's times where you can't, right? There's actual limits to goods and services and so on and so forth sometimes. But so, you know, I make a distinction between discriminations that are necessary, hypothetically, and I'm not saying which one, and those that are not. At the very, very beginning of Mistake of Identity, I write something that's proven to be very controversial because, you know, the left doesn't like this.
Let me hear it.
Sure. Yeah. It's basically, and I'm paraphrasing it poorly here, but an idea that I had back in my college days that, let's say a teacher, a professor has 5 slots, 10 slots, whatever the case may be, to take 10 students on a field trip. And it's really 10, it can't be any more. And, you know, if the teacher were to say, I'm going to, you know, draw straws or pick, you know, balls out of a hat, whatever the case may be, people would be okay with that in a sense. They would still be upset if they're left out, but they wouldn't feel that they were left out particularly because of, let's say,
some
race or,
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So they wouldn't say it's unfair. But what is it that makes that process okay? It's random. And what is random but arbitrary? Well, what if I were to say, what if the teacher were to say, well, I'm going to take the African Americans in the group because there's 10 of them happens to be. Precisely because it doesn't matter precisely because their race is should be ideally as irrelevant as a random draw. Now, everybody would be up in arms, of course. But no, you're doing it because you're racist. And maybe he is doing it because he's racist, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be that he actually doesn't even see it.
That's a difficult one, right? Because
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, how do you interpret that? I mean, if you could be pure and saying that given that we want race to be irrelevant, just using that as a discriminating factor because you only have 10 slots would be okay. But in today's society, that sort of a analysis it's catered by history, right?
Yeah, no question. No question, because then you would have to show, first of all, was it a necessary discrimination, or was the teacher just being, did he actually have a bias there?
Right.
And that's and so, but that example is simply to make the case that ideally that's what it would be, right?
And at first when you said it kind of, it held me aback, but I'm an engineer. So when I looked at it from a numerical point of view, it's like, okay, when they're doing it randomly, why? I mean, again, if we claim that we should all be race biased, we could say, well, we'll take all the, so I see your point. I actually see your point.
I'm glad you said, because to me, I'm glad you said you're an engineer and you see it numerically, because that's actually the perspective that it's coming from. There's a theory in the moral philosophy and ethics, utilitarianism, and there's multiple variations of it, but it ultimately has to do with, maximizing happiness for the largest number of people, assuming that all souls are equal, right? All else being equal. And so from that perspective, again, if 5 people are left out, 5 people are left out. And if you are more upset by the fact that those 5 people happen to share an arbitrary characteristic, then I would say you're the groupist. But so it's counterintuitive. I understand this, and it can be abused, and it has been abused. But once we see that may actually be, at least from a utilitarian perspective, the ideal, then it sheds a new light, right? Because the alternative is what? The alternative is for one group, to feel aggrieved, and it's not just one group. Everyone can come up with things that have happened to them, and not incorrectly. These things have happened and are happening. I don't mean to minimize that one bit or say that it's not correct. The issue is, what's the solution? Right. What's the solution? So that we don't end up in the same boat next year and the year after that and the year after that. And I believe that, mystics, whether it's in the Western tradition or the Eastern tradition, have always sort of seen this. This is not a new idea at all. But is it possible to apply this concept of a soul is a soul is a soul to our politics without it being misused by the right to just keep people down?
Don't you think we could, if it weren't such an effective tool? Because my contention, and if you I don't know how much of my show you've ever watched, but my contention is that that our economic system and our etc. needs to have us at each other's throats, in other words, in order to thrive. Because if you actually stop looking at you and me as the enemy, we start looking at the economic system, the design of the economic system, as the real enemy. Because again, in what economic system can the few profit from the many and the many just accept it?
I don't disagree with that. In fact, I am completely on your side. And if you put it that way, I think that groupism is used by the powerful to set people against each other. And distract them from the fact that we're all essentially being robbed blind. Right. And my issue is that people who are ideologically, and this is in the American context now, specifically today, hung up on party, on Democrat versus Republican. And I'm not saying there isn't differences between them, there are, but hung up to that, to the extent that it becomes another groupism where they can't judge a case, an issue case by case on its merits. They judge it more either instinctively or consciously or unconsciously based on, is that my group doing this or not? If we have time, if I could just jump into the Ukraine-Russia thing for a moment. as an example.
I tell you what, hold
Yeah.
that thought right there, because
Sure.
I want to bring you, now that you talk about the Democrat Republican thing, right now, I'm a Democrat because I caucus with the Democrats, but I'm a Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
kind of guy, because that is where you can actually, in our current today, is where you can affect policy. If I were in the 60s, I would probably be a Republican, because that is where policy was effected to bring, let's say, civil rights. Except for Johnson, who was a Democrat, it was a lot of Republicans that brought
That's right. They
progressivism.
switched.
Right. So, I mean, so what I'm saying is, for me, it's not about party. For me, it's about getting effective solutions. And to do that right now, it doesn't occur in there's a particular party where it doesn't occur in. And that's the only reason I would call myself a Democrat. I just wanted to put that.
Yeah, no,
put that.
I understand. In fact, I have had the thoughts, and I'm not the only one, the last several years, that the old notions of Democrat, Republican being left and right are really outdated in this
Completely,
country.
because they're neoliberals and all that. You have
Absolutely.
to get all that picture. A neoliberal is a Democrat is no different than a neoliberal Republican.
A Republican, absolutely. A Hillary Clinton, type of Democrat to name names here, or neoliberal, or in fact, I think the neocons and neoliberals are the same.
They're all in the same, and
Absolutely.
they just have different bases that they have to support, right?
That's right.
And I always talk about them being the rails. In other words, the left rail and the right rail. They keep this. They both move in the same direction, right? You have two rails. You have a left rail
That's
and a right rail, but guess what? They're moving in the same direction.
Yeah, it's a good cop, bad cop. It's a shuck and jive. Yeah, it's.
But anyway,
right.
You wanted to bring in Ukraine. It seems like we're going to move this interview in more of a conversational type. So go ahead and move it on, because this is not in your book. So let's have it.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, it's unavoidable right now. I have very conflicted views on this, because obviously, no question, what's going on is horrific. No. I mean, doesn't really need to be said. Any kind of aggression, war, the refugees, people being killed, is a horror show. The issue that I have with our media, our Western media as a whole, and its coverage, is that it seems so suddenly aware of things that our own government is doing on a regular basis as policy. I mean, as we speak, what's happening in Ukraine is happening in Yemen by the Saudis, backed by the United States. The United States is helping them with arms, money, intelligence, backing groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Yemen. And we've done the same thing in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria. I can name 100 examples from the Monroe Doctrine onwards, right? And it's so amazing that despite all of this, having come out for years now in academia, that the media can so quickly just become the lapdogs, in my opinion, of the Pentagon and White House and CIA. And once again, this is not to diminish what's happening in Ukraine. That's real. But it's just astonishing to me that there's no self-consciousness going on, self-awareness that what the Russians are doing is very similar, unfortunately, to what the United States has done and does on a regular basis as
I am
policy.
Impressed, may I say. I'm originally from Panama, Central America. 1989, Brother Bush, older Bush, sent the military in there, killed over 10,000 Panamanians. It's reported as 4,000 some places, 1,000 as others. It is no different than how the Russians indiscriminately kill to get what they want. They wanted Manuel Antonio Noriega. They got Manuel Antonio Noriega at the expense of 10,000 Panamanians. So absolutely. Yes, all the superpowers do the same thing. And I'm glad that you coined it exactly as I've done in several of my programs. We must go ahead and state that Russia is doing a horrendously evil thing, but let's use that and put that in context to what happened in Granada, to what happened in Panama, to what happened in Santo Domingo, to what happened, and we can name. You actually went overseas. We don't even have to go overseas. We
Vietnam,
can stay right
absolutely
here.
Right here. Yeah.
We can stay right.
There's I don't know if he's an anthropologist by trade or a sociologist, but he's a famous writer by the name of Jared Diamond here at UCLA, close to where I live. And he wrote something that I agree with strongly some years back. He did a description of all the genocides and ethnic cleansings and that have happened just over the last 100 years. And he pointed out that in terms of the media coverage, when it's the out group that's doing the aggression and the victim is the in group, then the media of the in group goes nuts, as they should. When it's the in group committing the atrocities, it's minimized, it's ignored, it's even encouraged, unfortunately. And when it's two groups that you don't really care about, it's sort of neutral. The media barely pays any attention.
Well,
to
I mean, I'm glad that I'm glad that you brought up the latter, because there was somebody who asked, I don't remember what interview, when one of these right wingers were really attacking Biden for, Biden's response, and the other guy said, "How come we're just talking about this? This is happening all over the world right now. You're not covering." Actually, it was an interview with the redhead that I really like the way she answers questions, because she's so good at it. And that is Jen Psaki being interviewed at the White House. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a White House spokesperson. And they asked her about, Yemen and all of that. And she came out and she honestly said it. I don't think the people in Yemen would think it's not relevant. I don't think the people in Ethiopia would think that it's not relevant, that we are not going in there and fighting on their behalves.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Why should we go in and fight on the behalf of Ukraine? It's horrendous to see the kids that Russia is killing. It's horrendous to see the destruction that's going on. But I think you hit the nail on the head.
I think that in the book I say something along these lines. I think the moment that you start to care about another person that you don't know, I add the term "you don't know" because clearly, if it's a family member or a friend, we're going to be biased, and that's just natural. But all else being equal, the moment I care more about someone who I don't know in Botswana, more or less than someone I don't know in Milwaukee, that's already the beginning of the end. There's no coming out, there's no solution to that game. And of course, we all do feel that way, whether we say it or not. If you put it that way, people realize, well, it's unfair. But at the same time, every country says America first or Russia first, whatever the case. Why Russia first? Why America first? Now, if it's because of an actual ideology, I'm all for that. I get it. I'm not one of these hippy dippies, as they say, I don't think all ideologies are the same. I don't think cultures are the same. In fact, I'm all for cultures competing with each other and showing that they may be better for the human condition than another culture. But that gets conflated and confused with the arbitrary characteristics that we did not choose. So when someone says I'm a Christian or a Muslim, how often is it that they've actually studied these things and come up with a rational decision as an adult? I would respect that much more. But almost always it happens to be where they were born. It's an identity. It's an identity and not so much a chosen ideology.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you, Darius, we've gone through a whole lot. We've taken the let me first tell you, whenever you come to Politics Done Right, I always give the latitude to my guests to take the conversation wherever they want to take it, but they must remember that we are in a limited time space when we speak. I think everything that you've said been ingenious. I think folks need to go ahead and pick up your book is sort of on the philosophical, good type of reading type of a deal. I think folks should go ahead and pick up both of your books, because it's worth a read. And if you listen to what you have to say, I am so sure that people are going to enjoy this. So what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
Well, you've done a good job here. I would end with a sort of I guess a paradoxical analogy. In our language, in our syntax, in our grammar, we use the term, we say that I have a body, right? We don't say I am a body. And we also say I have a brain. Again, we don't use the possessive. We use the possessive, I have a brain. We don't say I am a brain.
We don't say we are, we say it is ours. Yeah.
Have, possess, that's right. And even more strangely, we even say I have a mind. We don't say, I am a mind. And now that's sort of weird, isn't it? Because what is the thing that has the mind if it's not the mind itself?
Mm-hmm.
I would say whatever that thing is identical in you and in me, right? Our experiences, our bodies, our memories are different, but the thing that experiences these things, that ultimate subjectiveness, is identical. And that's actually, I'll hold up the book here. The symbol on this book, which means Atman in Hinduism, in that sense, we're all one. And if we can spiritually realize that while we are playing these political games and these cultural games, that you know, that I know, that you know, that ultimately we didn't choose this, right? Mm-hmm. That might do a little bit in unraveling this tangled mess we have in our politics, both domestically and internationally.
Let me first say before I close out, Darius, I think that was excellent. That is, I think if we can get people to think like that, realize that these are just, color, identity, and all of that. While I believe we have to play identity politics until identities are no longer matter, it will no longer matter if we adapt exactly how.
Absolutely. But by the way, I agree with that point as well. I don't think you should unilaterally disarm.
Exactly.
That's right.
Darius Kamali, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. The name of the two books, and I'm repeating them here because this is the kind of thought process I want more Americans to have. Mistake of Identity and Dog Whistling Dixie Past the Graveyard. It's been my honor to have you on Politics Done Right. Darius Kamali.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Egberto Willies, as host of Politics Done Right, a progressive radio media show on Pacifica Network's KPFT 90.1 FM Houston that engages all ideologies. I found that our political angst isn't mostly ideological. There is a well-designed effort by many in power to control us. If we are at each other's throats, we are less likely to demand our economic and local wishes. In that light, I wrote 3 books. I wrote the first one titled, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, to describe the entire economy in a manner we can all understand. It highlights why it was designed to pilfer most as it empowers a few, the chosen. The second book, titled, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, take it to the next level. After understanding how the system pilfers, it is incumbent that we can speak to our peers to empower a change. The third book, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, gives us a place to land. After learning about our economy that is dysfunctional for most and learning how to engage the other side, we point out what would make an economy that works for all. Each book stands on its own, but together they provide the full picture. Please consider getting one or more. You will undoubtedly learn, be entertained, and help us continue the mission with our blogs, articles, videos, and books. Well, folks, thank you so kindly. And yes, Brish, thank you for reminding me for doing that again. As usual, I forgot. Louis Johnson, welcome aboard. Well, what the hell is conservatism other than a focus on identity? Boy, Louis Johnson, you're a smart dude. Good interview, Egberto Willies. How do you find these people? Actually, they find us. They find the PDR posse. They find us. Their publicists see you guys. They see the interaction that goes along with our show, and they say, "Wow, this would be a good person to expose to that audience." So it's all us that find these people. Not I don't go find them. They find us, all of us together. Let's see, folks. You can support us by going to politicsandright.com/PayPal. politicsandright.com/PayPal. You can also support us by going to politicsandright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. Patreon. Likewise, you can get on our YouTube channel and be a member, an actual paid member of the YouTube channel, whatever you can, at politicsandright.com/YouTube, politicsandright.com/YouTube. And of course, we have a lot of new stuff at the store. Please visit our store, politicsandright.com/store. politicsandright.com/store. And the books, please get the books. All these different, we try to give you a lot of different ways to support us that is more convenient for you. Different people have different conveniences. So that's the reason we have all these options. politicsandright.com/books to get our books. And if you want to all of this in one place, what are the forms in which I want to support Politics and Right? Go to politicsandright.com/support, politicsandright.com/support. Let's see if there's anybody I didn't salute. I want to salute Lewis Johnson, who I didn't before, E2247. I think I got you before, but welcome aboard. Rose Williams. Rose, come on in. How are you doing, my dear friend? Thank you for being here. Mike Cisak, thank you for showing up as well. Who else is here with us today that I haven't called out? If I haven't called you, drop a quick message so it appears at the bottom of the list so that I can salute you. You know, I like to salute absolutely every one of our kind listeners. But anyhow, I got to get out of here. Please support the program. politicsandright.com/PayPal or politicsandright.com/support. politicsandright.com/PayPal, politicsandright.support. Guess you are out, eh? Yeah. Well, I'm about to do it, my dear beautiful Bridge. So here we go. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics and Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.